I'm Madeline, 32 years old, and what should have been the happiest day of my life became my worst nightmare. As an event planner, I'd created perfect weddings for countless brides, but nothing prepared me for discovering my fiancé Robert, kissing my sister Sophia just minutes before I was supposed to walk down the aisle. In that moment, watching them through the partially open door, my entire world shattered. Still, I made a decision that shocked everyone, including myself. Before I tell you what happened when I walked down that aisle anyway, let me know where you're watching from and hit subscribe. If you've ever had to make a life-changing decision in just seconds, Chicago had always been home to me. The gleaming skyline, the bustling energy, and even the brutal winters. I loved it all. After graduating from Northwestern with a business degree, I'd built my event planning company, Elite Affairs, from the ground up. By 32, I had established myself as one of the go-to planners for luxury weddings and high-end corporate events in the city. The irony that I spent my days creating perfect moments for others, while my own life would implode so spectacularly, isn't lost on me. I met Robert at the annual Children's Hospital Benefit Gala 3 years ago. I was running the event, racing around in comfortable flats with my emergency kit, making sure everything went perfectly for my client. He was there representing his investment firm, which was one of the major donors. I first noticed him during the silent auction, confidently bidding on a luxury vacation package. "You know, the flower arrangements are absolutely stunning," he said, approaching me with a glass of champagne. "Someone with exceptional taste must have chosen them." I smiled, surprised he had noticed that detail. "Thank you. The florist executed my vision beautifully." "So you're the mastermind behind all of this." His eyes, a striking blue that contrasted with his dark hair, took in my clipboard and earpiece. "Guilty as charged. Madeline Collins, Elite Affairs. Robert Whitman, Apex Capital." His handshake was firm, confident. "I've been to dozens of these events, and this is by far the most elegant." By the end of the night, he had my business card and personal number. Our first date was the following weekend at a small Italian restaurant in Lincoln Park. He arrived with a single white rose and remembered every detail I'd mentioned during our brief conversation at the gala. It felt like I'd known him for years rather than days. Our relationship progressed quickly. Robert was charismatic, attentive, and seemed to understand my demanding work schedule in a way previous boyfriends never had. Within 6 months, we were discussing moving in together. By our 1-year anniversary, we were looking at houses in the suburbs, planning for a future I thought was certain. Then there was my sister Sophia, younger by 3 years, and the family favourite since the day she was born. Growing up, I'd tried so hard, perfect grades, extracurricular activities, helping around the house, while Sophia effortlessly captured everyone's affection with her spontaneity and charm. When I made valedictorian, my parents' praise was tempered with, "Don't make your sister feel bad." When I got into Northwestern with a partial scholarship, the accomplishment was overshadowed by concern about Sophia's college applications. Despite this, I adored my sister. We shared clothes secrets and late-night talks about our dreams. But as we grew older, I couldn't ignore the pattern that emerged. Sophia would date my ex-boyfriends, claiming it just happened. She chose marketing as her career after I mentioned interest in the field. When I started my business, she suddenly became interested in event planning too, though she never committed to it fully. "It's just because she looks up to you," my mother would say whenever I expressed frustration. "Take it as a compliment." I tried. I really did. When Sophia moved to Chicago 2 years after I did, I helped her find an apartment and introduced her to my friends. When she struggled financially, I gave her work at my company, though her unreliability meant I couldn't keep her on permanently. Through it all, I maintained the belief that blood was thicker than water, that the bond between sisters was unbreakable. Robert proposed on my 30th birthday. He arranged for us to have a private sunset dinner at the top of the Willis Tower, though like most Chicagoans, I still called it the Sears Tower. As the city lights began to twinkle below us, he dropped to one knee and opened a small velvet box containing a vintage emerald ring. "Madeline Collins, you organize everyone else's perfect moments. I want to spend the rest of my life creating perfect moments with you. Will you marry me?" Tears blurred my vision as I said yes. It felt like everything in my life had led to this point. Finally, my own happiness was taking center stage. Planning my own wedding after organizing countless events for clients was surreal. I secured the grand ballroom at the Drake Hotel for the reception, found a florist willing to source peonies out of season, and hired the photographer celebrities requested when they got married in Chicago. The cake would be 6 tiers of different flavors, the band was flown in from New York, and my dress was a custom Vera Wang. Everything was going to be perfect. Sophia was naturally my maid of honor. When I asked her, she hugged me tightly and whispered, "I'm so happy for you, Maddie. You deserve this." Looking back, there were signs I should have recognized. When Robert and I disagreed about wedding details, he would often say, "Well, Sophia thinks." When work kept me late, they would meet without me to taste cakes or meet with vendors. I found it strange when Robert bought Sophia an expensive bracelet as a thank you for helping with wedding planning, but I dismissed my unease as pre-wedding stress. One evening, about 4 months before the wedding, I caught a strange look between them during our cake tasting. Robert's hand lingered on Sophia's when they both reached for the same sample. She held his gaze a moment too long before turning to me with a bright smile. "The lemon with raspberry filling is divine, don't you think, Maddie?" I nodded, a knot forming in my stomach that I tried to ignore. Robert was just being friendly with my sister. Sophia was just excited about the wedding. I was imagining things because of stress. These became my mantras as I pushed down the growing unease. My best friend Taylor wasn't convinced. After meeting Robert and Sophia for dinner one night, she pulled me aside with concern in her eyes. "Is it just me, or do those two seem a little too comfortable with each other? They've spent a lot of time together planning the wedding." I defended, though the knot in my stomach tightened. "Maddie, he spent the entire night talking about how refreshing Sophia's perspective is, and she couldn't stop touching his arm when she laughed. Just keep your eyes open, okay?" I assured her I would, but part of me didn't want to see what might be right in front of me. After all, this was my sister and my fiancé. The two people I trusted most in the world wouldn't betray me so completely, would they? As the wedding date approached, more red flags appeared. I found texts on Robert's phone from Sophia at odd hours. When questioned, he said they were discussing surprise bridal shower details. Once I came home early to find them sitting unusually close on the couch, looking at something on Robert's laptop that they quickly closed when I entered. "Just finalizing some wedding day surprises," Robert explained with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. I wanted to believe him. I needed to believe him. The alternative was too painful to consider. As the wedding date drew closer, my workload at Elite Affairs intensified. We had booked 3 major corporate events in the same month as my wedding, and while my assistant handled much of the day-to-day, the client still wanted me personally involved. The stress began to wear on me, making it harder to ignore the growing tension at home. "I don't understand why you can't delegate more," Robert complained one evening as I worked on seating arrangements for both the client's charity gala and our own wedding. "The business won't collapse if you take some time off." "These are important clients," I explained for what felt like the 100th time. "Their events were booked months before we set our wedding date." "Sophia thinks you're using work as an escape," he said casually, checking his phone as it buzzed with a notification. "She mentioned you've always done that when you're anxious." The comment stung. Since when did Robert and Sophia discuss my coping mechanisms? And why was my sister analyzing my behavior to my fiancé? "I've got this under control," I said firmly, trying to mask my irritation. "And I'd appreciate if you and Sophia didn't discuss my supposed psychological issues behind my back." Robert looked up from his phone, a flash of guilt crossing his face before it was replaced with a defensive frown. "We're both concerned about you, that's all. You seem stressed." "Of course I'm stressed. I'm planning a wedding and running a business." The argument ended with Robert grabbing his jacket and saying he needed some air. His phone buzzed again as he left, and I caught Sophia's name on the screen before he quickly pocketed the device. The next day, Sophia called to suggest we meet for the final fitting of my wedding dress. When I arrived at the boutique, she was already there chatting animatedly with the seamstress. "There she is," Sophia exclaimed, giving me a tight hug. "I was just telling Elise how excited we all are for the big day. Only 6 weeks to go." As I tried on the dress, Sophia circled me with a critical eye. "It's beautiful, but are you sure about the neckline? It might be a bit much for your frame." The seamstress frowned slightly. "The neckline suits her perfectly. I'm just saying Robert tends to prefer more classic styles." Sophia continued adjusting the veil in the mirror. "He mentioned loving the simpler dress at that charity event last month." "When did Robert discuss wedding dress styles with you?" I asked, meeting her eyes in the mirror. Sophia shrugged, avoiding my gaze. "Oh, it came up when we were looking at the floral arrangements last week. He's got quite an eye for detail, that man of yours." "That man of yours." Something about the way she said it made my skin crawl. Later that week, we had dinner with my parents, who had flown in from Denver to help with final wedding preparations. My mother gushed over Sophia's involvement. "It's so wonderful how you've included your sister in everything, Madeline," she said, patting Sophia's hand. "And Robert..." You're such a good sport about all this wedding planning. Most men would run for the hills. Robert smiled, his arm draped casually over the back of Sophia's chair rather than mine. Actually, Sophia's been the real MVP here. She's got an incredible eye for detail, just like her sister. Better than her sister sometimes, Sophia joked, but there was an edge to her voice. Maddie's been so busy with work, I've had to step in quite a bit. Well, someone has to pay for this extravaganza, I said lightly, though my chest tightened at their exchange. My father, always more perceptive than my mother, gave me a questioning look across the table. I shook my head slightly, not wanting to create a scene. After dinner, as Robert excused himself to take a phone call, my father pulled me aside. "Everything okay, Pumpkin? You seem tense." I considered telling him about my concerns, but hesitated. What would I even say? My fiancé and sister are spending too much time together. They seemed too familiar. I had no proof of anything inappropriate, just a growing unease I couldn't shake. "Just wedding stress, Dad," I assured him. "Everything's fine." The next morning, I woke early to find Robert's side of the bed empty. His text said he'd gone for a run, but his running shoes were still by the door. When he returned an hour later, showered and dressed, I pretended not to notice the discrepancy. That afternoon, I was searching for a contract in Robert's home office when I found a receipt for a hotel room from the previous week, a day he'd told me he was working late. My hands trembled as I placed it back exactly where I'd found it. That night, I checked his phone while he was in the shower. There were dozens of texts from Sophia, many deleted, leaving strange gaps in the conversation. The ones that remained seemed innocent enough, but their frequency was unsettling. And why delete texts if there was nothing to hide? "You're becoming paranoid," I whispered to myself, putting the phone back. "This is Robert. This is Sophia. They wouldn't do this to you." The bachelorette weekend came as a welcome distraction. Taylor had organized a trip to a luxury spa resort in Michigan, just a few hours' drive from Chicago. My college friends and colleagues joined us for a weekend of relaxation and celebration. Throughout the weekend, though, Sophia was constantly checking her phone, smiling at messages before quickly hiding the screen if anyone came near. When Taylor asked who was texting her so persistently, Sophia flushed and muttered something about a work crisis. "Your marketing agency has crises at midnight on a Saturday," Taylor asked skeptically. "It's a big campaign launch," Sophia replied defensively. "Some of us don't have the luxury of turning off our phones." The barb was clearly directed at me, though I rarely disconnected from work either. The tension between us grew as the weekend progressed. When we returned to Chicago Sunday evening, Sophia declined my offer of a shared Uber, saying she had some errands to run, despite the late hour. The following week brought the biggest argument Robert and I had ever had. I confronted him about the hotel receipt and the strange behavior I'd been noticing. "Are you accusing me of something?" he demanded, his face flushing with anger. "After everything I've done to help with this wedding while you're always working." "I'm not accusing you of anything," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "I'm just asking why you needed a hotel room in our own city and didn't mention it to me. It was a work thing. We had clients in town. We had drinks. It got late. I didn't want to drive home exhausted. Why are you looking through my things anyway? Don't you trust me?" His indignation made me second-guess myself. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe the stress was getting to me. "Of course I trust you," I said finally. "I'm sorry. It's just the wedding pressure." Robert stormed out anyway, saying he needed space. He didn't come home that night, and when I called him repeatedly, he didn't answer. Frantic, I finally called Taylor, who came over with ice cream and reassurance. "He probably just needed to cool off," she said, though she didn't look convinced. Men are terrible at handling conflict. The next morning, I got a text from Robert saying he was fine, that he'd stayed with a friend, and that he'd be home that evening. Relieved but still unsettled, I decided to stop by his favourite bar on my lunch break, thinking I'd leave a note with the bartender, a peace offering of sorts. As I approached the bar, I saw them through the window. Robert and Sophia sitting close in a booth, her hand on his arm, his head bent toward hers in an intimate pose. They weren't kissing, but the body language was unmistakable. This wasn't a brother-in-law and sister-in-law relationship. I stood frozen on the sidewalk, unable to move, unable to breathe. A passing businessman asked if I was okay, but his voice seemed to come from very far away. By the time I regained my composure, Robert and Sophia had separated, both checking their phones as if nothing had happened. I walked away without letting them see me, my mind racing. What should I do? Confront them, call off the wedding, pretend I hadn't seen anything. 3 years of building a life with Robert, 32 years of sisterhood with Sophia. Could I throw it all away based on suspicion? Back at my office, I cancelled my afternoon appointments and sat staring at the wall. Taylor found me there hours later, still in the same position. Maddie? What happened? Her concern broke the dam and everything poured out. All the signs I'd been ignoring, what I'd just witnessed, my confusion and pain. Taylor's expression hardened as I spoke. I knew something was off. That night at dinner, the way they looked at each other. Maddie, you need to confront them. Both of them. The wedding is in 3 weeks, I whispered. All the deposits are paid. Everyone's travel is booked. And that matters more than your self-respect. Taylor's bluntness cut through my shock. If they're having an affair, you need to know before you say, I do. I nodded, knowing she was right, but terrified of the truth. That evening, when Robert came home, I couldn't bring myself to confront him. What if I was wrong? What if I was throwing away my future based on paranoia? Instead, I watched him closely over the next few weeks, gathering evidence. The secret phone calls, the unexplained absences, the way he and Sophia always seemed to find excuses to be alone together. 3 days before the wedding, I overheard Robert on the phone, his voice low and intimate. I know, it's complicated. Just a little longer, I promise. After the honeymoon, I'll figure it out. When he saw me standing in the doorway, he quickly ended the call. Work? He explained with an unconvincing smile. Last-minute deal before the wedding. I nodded, pretending to believe him, while my heart shattered a little more. Still, I said nothing. The wedding machinery was in full motion. Guests arriving, final payments being made, rehearsal dinner planned. I told myself I would get through the wedding, then deal with whatever was happening between my husband and my sister. Looking back, I was in denial. Deep down, I knew exactly what was happening. I just couldn't bear to face it yet. The morning of my wedding dawned bright and clear, a perfect Chicago spring day that matched none of the turmoil inside me. The Drake Hotel had prepared a luxurious suite for the bridal party with champagne on ice and platters of fruit and pastries that no one, least of all me, had much appetite for. My 3 bridesmaids, Taylor and 2 college friends, Jessica and Lauren, arrived early, already dressed in their sage green gowns. Their excitement was genuine, their affection for me real. It made Sophia's artificial enthusiasm all the more jarring when she finally arrived 40 minutes late. Traffic was insane, she explained breathlessly, though she lived only 15 minutes from the hotel. Her makeup was already perfectly applied, her hair freshly styled. But I'm here now, let's get my big sister married. The makeup artist was working on my face when my parents arrived. My mother immediately began fussing with the flowers, while my father stood awkwardly by the window, looking uncomfortable in his tuxedo. You look beautiful, Madeline, he said, his voice gruff with emotion. Robert's a lucky man. I managed to smile, though my father's words sent a fresh wave of pain through me. If only he knew. As the morning progressed, I noticed Sophia disappearing from the bridal suite, periodically always returning with a slightly flushed face and a different excuse. Just checking on the flowers. Making sure the string quartet arrived. Confirming the reception seating. Taylor noticed too, her eyes narrowing each time my sister reappeared. During one of Sophia's absences, she leaned close to me. Are you okay? You seem a million miles away. Just nerves, I lied, adjusting my veil for the 100th time. The wedding coordinator knocked on the door, announcing that the ceremony would begin in 30 minutes. Guests were being seated, the groom and groomsmen were in position, and it was time for final touches. As the stylist made one last adjustment to my hair, my father cleared his throat. Madeline, you know you can tell me if something's wrong, right? It's not too late to change your mind about anything. For a moment, I was tempted to confess everything, to collapse into my father's arms and let him fix it like he had when I was little. But the words wouldn't come. Instead, I shook my head. Everything's fine, Dad. Just wedding day jitters. He didn't look convinced, but didn't press further. My mother, oblivious to the undercurrents, was busy instructing the bridesmaids on the precise way to carry their bouquets. Where's Sophia? She suddenly asked, looking around. She needs to be ready for the procession. No one had noticed my sister slip out again. Taylor volunteered to find her, her expression making it clear she had suspicions about where, or with whom, my maid of honor might be. While waiting, I realized I'd forgotten my something blue, a sapphire hairpin that had belonged to my grandmother. I'd left it in Robert's suite, where we'd been staying until last night, when tradition dictated we spend the night before the wedding apart. I'll just run and get it, I told the coordinator. Robert should be at the altar by now. She frowned, checking her watch. I can send someone. No, I need the walk to calm my nerves, I insisted, already heading for the door. I'll be right back. The hallway was quiet, most guests already in the ceremony space. I took the elevator to the 4th floor where Robert's suite was located. My hands trembled slightly as I used the keycard I'd kept. The sitting room of the suite was empty, but I heard voices from the bedroom, a man and a woman speaking in hushed, urgent tones. My blood turned to ice as I recognized them instantly. The bedroom door was ajar, and through the gap I could see them. Robert, already dressed in his tuxedo, had his arms around Sophia. Her bridesmaid dress was unzipped at the back, his hands caressing her bare skin. They were kissing deeply, passionately, with the familiarity of lovers who had done this many times before. "We can't keep doing this," Sophia was saying as they broke apart, though she made no move to leave his embrace. "After today, you'll be her husband." "In name only," Robert replied, his voice low and intense. "You know how I really feel. It's always been you, Sophia, from the moment we met. But the wedding is necessary. You know that." Madeline's connections are valuable for the firm. Her client list alone will open doors that would take years to access otherwise. Once we're married, once the business relationships are established, I can leave her. We just need to be patient a little longer. Sophia sighed, resting her forehead against his. 6 months of sneaking around has been hard enough. I don't know if I can watch you be her husband even temporarily. It won't be a real marriage, Robert assured her, his hands now running through her hair in a gesture I had once thought was reserved for me. And it won't be for long. A year, maybe less. Then we can be together openly. Think of it as a business arrangement. And she suspects nothing, Sophia asked, a note of guilt in her voice that somehow made the betrayal even worse. Robert laughed softly. Madeline sees what she wants to see. She's so wrapped up in her perfect wedding and her precious business that she's completely oblivious. Besides, who would suspect their own sister? The pain that shot through me was so intense it felt physical, as if someone had driven a knife into my chest. I must have made a sound because they both suddenly looked toward the door. I ducked back, pressing myself against the wall of the sitting room, trying to control my breathing. "Did you hear something?" Sophia asked, her voice tense. "Probably just housekeeping," Robert dismissed. "We should get back before someone notices we're both missing. The ceremony starts soon." I slipped out of the suite before they emerged from the bedroom, my mind and body on autopilot. Somehow I made it to a service corridor before the shock hit me fully. My legs gave way and I slid down the wall to the floor, gasping for air that wouldn't come. The room spun around me as the full implications of what I'd just witnessed and heard sank in. My fiancé and my sister. For 6 months, while I planned our wedding. While they helped me choose flowers and cake flavors. While I imagined my future with a man who saw me as nothing more than a business connection, a stepping stone, a temporary inconvenience on his path to being with my own sister. I don't know how long I sat there, hyperventilating, tears streaming down my face and ruining the makeup that had taken an hour to apply. Time seemed to stop, the world narrowing to the crushing weight of betrayal pressing down on me. "Madeline, oh my God, Madeline." It was Taylor, her face appearing in my tunneled vision. She knelt beside me, her hands gripping my shoulders. "What happened? What's wrong?" The words tumbled out between gasping sobs. Robert, Sophia, the affair, the cruel things I'd overheard, the calculated betrayal by the two people I trusted most. Taylor's expression shifted from concern to fury. "Those absolute snakes," she hissed on. "I'm going to kill them both. The wedding is off. I'll announce it myself." "Kakats." She started to rise, but I grabbed her wrist. "No," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. "No, I need to think." My mind was racing through the implications. 200 guests already seated, family and friends who had travelled from across the country, tens of thousands of dollars in non-refundable deposits, my professional reputation as an event planner, the public humiliation of being left at the altar, or worse, entering a sham marriage only to be discarded when I was no longer useful. "Help me up," I said, finally wiping at my tears, "and help me fix my makeup." Taylor stared at me in disbelief. "You're not seriously considering going through with this?" I met her eyes, a cold resolve replacing the shock and pain. "I'm going to walk down that aisle, but not for the reason anyone expects." The next 20 minutes passed in a blur of focused activity. Taylor helped me to a staff bathroom where we repaired my makeup, erasing all evidence of tears. My hands shook as I reapplied lipstick, but my mind was clear, a plan forming with each passing second. "Are you sure about this?" Taylor asked for the 3rd time as we made our way back to the bridal suite. "We could just leave, disappear, let them explain to everyone why the bride is missing." I shook my head, adjusting my veil. "No, I won't be the one who disappears today." When we returned, chaos had erupted in our absence. The wedding coordinator was frantically checking her watch, my mother was on the verge of tears, and my father was on his phone trying to reach me. Sophia was there too, looking perfectly composed except for a slight smudge of lipstick at the corner of her mouth. Lipstick that matched the shade I'd seen on Robert's collar. "Madeline, where have you been? The ceremony was supposed to start 10 minutes ago." My mother's relief quickly turned to criticism. "Your mascara is smudged. Lisa, can you fix that?" She gestured to the makeup artist. "I'm fine," I said firmly, my voice calmer than I felt. "Let's proceed." Sophia approached her expression, a mask of concern that turned wary when she saw my eyes. For a moment, I thought she knew that I knew, but her plastered-on smile returned quickly. "Cold feet, sis. Don't worry, Robert is perfect for you. Trust me." The irony of her words might have made me laugh if the pain weren't so fresh. My father took me aside as the coordinator, Aisum, began lining up the bridesmaids for the procession. "Pumpkin, something's wrong. I can see it in your eyes. Whatever it is, we can fix it, even if it means stopping this wedding." I looked at my father, this man who had always tried to protect me, even when he didn't understand me. "I need to do this, Dad. I need to walk down that aisle." He searched my face, then nodded slowly. "I'll be right beside you." The wedding march began, the sound of strings filling the historic cathedral we'd chosen for its perfect acoustics. One by one, the bridesmaids proceeded, followed by Sophia as maid of honor. She didn't look back at me, her focus entirely on the front of the church where Robert waited. Then it was our turn. My father offered his arm, and I took it, gripping perhaps a little tighter than necessary. The doors opened fully, and 200 guests rose to their feet, turning to watch my entrance. The aisle stretched before me, scattered with rose petals, just as I'd planned. At the far end stood Robert handsome, in his tuxedo, a smile on his face that appeared genuine to everyone but me. Now I could see it for what it was. The self-satisfied smile of a man who thought he was getting away with something. Beside him, his best man and groomsmen. To the left, my bridesmaids with Sophia front and center, her expression carefully composed, but her eyes darting nervously between Robert and me. Each step down the aisle felt like moving through water. The guests smiled, some wiping away tears, completely unaware of the drama about to unfold. My mother sat in the front row, beaming with pride. Friends from college, colleagues, from work relatives, who had travelled from across the country, all witnesses to what should have been the happiest day of my life. As we reached the altar, the officiant stepped forward with a warm smile. "Who gives this woman to be married?" he asked, following the traditional script we'd selected. My father's voice was steady. "Her mother and I do." He squeezed my hand once before placing it in Robert's and stepping back. Robert's fingers closed around mine, and it took everything in me not to recoil from his touch. His eyes searched my face, perhaps sensing something was off, but his smile never faltered. The officiant began his welcome, speaking of love and commitment, sacred vows, and lifelong partnerships. Each word was a fresh wound, given what I now knew. When he asked if anyone knew any reason why we should not be joined in marriage, the irony was almost unbearable. Before he could continue to the vows, I gently extracted my hand from Robert's and turned to face our guests. With a calm, I didn't feel I reached for the microphone the officiant had been using. "Before we continue," I said, my voice echoing through the cathedral, "I'd like to say a few words." Confused murmurs rippled through the congregation. Robert's smile became fixed, a flash of concern in his eyes. Beside him, Sophia had gone pale. "First, I want to thank you all for coming today. Some of you have travelled great distances to be here, and I'm grateful for your presence." I paused, taking a deep breath. What I'm about to say isn't easy, but I believe that marriage should be built on honesty, and so I need to be honest with all of you now. Robert stepped closer, placing a hand on my arm. "Madeline, what are you doing?" he whispered urgently. "This isn't the time for speeches." I gently but firmly removed his hand. 30 minutes ago, I went to Robert's suite to retrieve something I'd forgotten. Instead, I found my fiancé and my sister together. Not just together, in an embrace that made it very clear they've been having an affair. The cathedral erupted in gasps and whispers. My mother's hand flew to her mouth in shock. My father half rose from his seat, his face darkening with anger. "Madeline, you're having some kind of breakdown," Robert said loudly, attempting to take the microphone from me. "This is ridiculous." I held firm, stepping away from him. "Is it ridiculous, Robert? Should I tell everyone what I heard you say about how marrying me was just a business arrangement, about how my connections were valuable to your firm, about how you planned to leave me after a year?" Sophia had begun to cry, but I could see the tears were more from fear of exposure than remorse. "Maddie, please," she began, but I cut her off. 6 months, Sophia. That's how long you said you've been sneaking around with my fiancé. 6 months while you helped me plan this wedding. 6 months of looking me in the eye every day and lying. Robert tried a different approach, addressing the stunned guests directly. Clearly, Madeline is suffering from pre-wedding anxiety. She's been under tremendous stress. None of what she's saying is true. I reached into the hidden pocket I'd had sewn into my wedding dress, a practical addition I'd insisted on, and pulled out Robert's phone, which I'd taken from his jacket when he wasn't looking during our brief interaction at the altar. "Passcode 1221, I said, looking directly at him. "Sophia's birthday, not mine." I unlocked the phone and scrolled to the message thread I'd already located. "Would you like me to read these texts aloud, Robert? Or would you prefer I just pass the phone around?" His face went from red to white in an instant. Sophia stepped forward, her voice pleading. "Maddie, it just happened. We didn't mean to hurt you. We tried to fight it, but..." "But what?" I asked, my voice breaking for the first time. But betraying me was easier, more convenient, more exciting. My mother had finally found her voice. "This is a misunderstanding," she insisted, standing up. "Sophia would never do such a thing, and not with Robert of all people. Ask her yourself," I said, my gaze never leaving my sister's face. "Ask her if she's in love with my fiancé. Ask her if they've been sleeping together while I planned our wedding." The silence that followed was deafening. Sophia's lack of denial was confirmation enough for everyone present. Robert's father stood up next, his authoritative voice cutting through the tension. "Son, is this true?" Robert's shoulders slumped slightly, the facade cracking. "It's complicated, Dad. Madeline's blowing things out of proportion." "That's not a denial," his father noted grimly. I turned back to our guests, my voice steady once more. "I apologize to all of you for this public scene, but I refuse to begin a marriage based on lies and betrayal. The reception will continue as planned. The food is paid for, the band is ready, and there's an open bar. I invite you all to enjoy it with or without the bridegroom or maid of honor." With that, I handed the microphone back to the stunned officiant, gathered my dress, and walked back down the aisle alone. The silence followed me until I reached the doors, then erupted into chaos behind me. I didn't look back, not even when I heard my father's voice raised in anger, not even when I heard Sophia call my name. In the vestibule, Taylor was waiting. Without a word, she wrapped her arm around my waist, supporting me as my composure finally began to crack. "Car's waiting out back," she said quietly. "Let's get you out of here." As we slipped out a side door, I heard raised voices from the cathedral, Robert and my father from the sound of it. I didn't stay to listen. I'd said what needed to be said. The truth was out. The rest was no longer my concern. In the car headed to a hotel Taylor had quickly booked under her name, I finally allowed the tears to come. Not just tears of betrayal and heartbreak, but tears of relief. I hadn't gone through with a sham marriage. I hadn't compromised my self-respect. I had faced the hardest truth imaginable and survived. "What now?" Taylor asked gently as the city passed by outside the window. I looked down at the engagement ring still on my finger. With a decisive motion, I pulled it off and dropped it into my purse. Now I start over. The aftermath of my non-wedding was as chaotic and painful as you might expect. I checked into a boutique hotel in Lincoln Park under Taylor's name, turned off my phone, and spent that first night staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment of the past 6 months in my mind, seeing all the signs I'd missed or ignored. When I finally turned my phone on the next morning, it nearly exploded with notifications. Hundreds of texts and calls from friends, family, and even clients who had heard what happened. Social media was buzzing with versions of the story, some accurate, others wildly exaggerated. One guest had apparently recorded my speech and shared it with friends who shared it further until it went viral in certain Chicago circles. Chicago's top event planner exposes cheating fiancé and sister at her own wedding, read one local blog headline. I closed the browser, unwilling to read more. Robert's messages alternated between anger and manipulation. "What you did was completely unprofessional and irrational. We could have discussed this privately. You've ruined everything with your dramatic outburst. This could have been handled discreetly. Please call me. I can explain everything. It wasn't what it looked like. Do you realize how much money you wasted? You're going to be liable for all those costs." His threats about financial consequences were particularly rich, coming from a man who had planned to use me for my professional connections before discarding me. I deleted his messages without responding. Sophia's texts were equally predictable. "Maddie, please talk to me. It just happened, I swear. We never meant for any of this. I know you hate me right now, but you're still my sister. I love you. We can work through this. Robert and I have ended things. It was a mistake. Please forgive me. Cut. That last one sent 3 days after the wedding made me laugh bitterly. They had ended things only after being publicly exposed. There was no remorse for the betrayal, only regret at being caught. My parents' reactions split along predictable lines. My father called repeatedly, leaving voicemails full of concern for me and fury at Robert and Sophia. I'll handle cancelling the honeymoon and returning the gifts, he assured me. You just take care of yourself, pumpkin, and know that I'm here when you're ready to talk. My mother's approach was less supportive. You've always been dramatic, Madeline, but this takes the cake, she said when I finally answered her call. Do you have any idea how embarrassed we are? Couldn't you have handled this privately? Like how Robert and Sophia handled their affair privately? I shot back. I found out 30 minutes before I was supposed to marry him, Mum. What would you have had me do? Go through with it and discuss it later, she said, as if it were the most reasonable solution in the world. Now there's all this gossip and Sophia is absolutely devastated. Sophia is devastated. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She slept with my fiancé for 6 months while helping me plan my wedding to him. She made a mistake, my mother insisted. People make mistakes, Madeline. Now both of you are hurting, and for what Robert is gone, either way. I ended the call shortly after, unable to stomach my mother's defense of Sophia's indefensible actions. It was exactly the pattern that had defined our entire childhood. Sophia could do no wrong while I was expected to be the bigger person to forgive, to accommodate. Not this time. The professional fallout was another concern. Elite Affairs had a reputation for flawless execution and drama-free events. Now my own wedding had become the talk of Chicago's social scene. Would clients still trust me with their special days when mine had ended so spectacularly? To my surprise, the business impact was mixed rather than entirely negative. Several clients reached out with messages of support, assuring me that their events were still in my hands. A few high-profile clients did cancel, uncomfortable with the public nature of my personal drama, but there was also a surprising uptick in inquiries. It seemed that my wedding speech had impressed some people with my authenticity and refusal to accept betrayal. If you were that committed to truth at your own wedding, I know you'll be honest with me about my event, one new client told me. Taylor became my shield and protector during those early days. She fielded calls, brought me food, and even packed up my things from the apartment I'd shared with Robert. He tried to argue that some of your stuff was actually his, she reported after one such mission. I told him he could take it up with your father, who was surprisingly eager to have that conversation. The thought of my mild-mannered father confronting Robert made me smile, the first genuine smile since the wedding day. The practical aspects of cancelling a wedding after the fact were surprisingly complex. Returning gifts, notifying vendors, cancelling the honeymoon, moving out of our shared apartment. Each task was a fresh reminder of what I'd lost, or rather, what I'd never really had in the first place. 2 weeks after the wedding, Robert showed up at my office unannounced. I'd returned to work needing the distraction and routine, though I'd delegated client-facing meetings to my assistant temporarily. You're ruining my reputation, he said without preamble, standing in my doorway with anger etched on his face. Clients are asking questions, pulling their accounts. I looked at him calmly, surprised by how little I felt. The man I'd planned to spend my life with now seemed like a stranger, and not a particularly impressive one. That sounds like a personal problem, Robert, one you created yourself. This vindictive stunt has consequences, he continued, ignoring my response. I could sue you for defamation. Truth is an absolute defense to defamation, I replied, grateful for the business law course I'd taken years ago. And I have text witnesses and your own admission to Sophia that marrying me was just for business connections. Please sue me. I'd love to make all of that public record. His face flushed with anger, but I could see the calculation behind his eyes. He knew I was right. This isn't over, Madeline. Actually, it is, I said, turning back to my computer. Taylor left some of your things with the doorman at my new building. Don't contact me again. After he left, I sat shaking, not from fear, but from the release of tension. I had faced him and felt nothing. No love, no hate, just emptiness, where strong emotions had once lived. A month after the wedding, I received a text from an unknown number with a photo attached. It showed Robert and Sophia together at a restaurant, his arm around her shoulders, both smiling for the camera. There was no message, just the image clearly sent to hurt me. I blocked the number without responding, but the pain was real and fresh. They were actually together now, their affair out in the open. The relationship that had been worth destroying mine for was apparently continuing. It shouldn't have surprised me, but it did. Family gatherings became impossible. Thanksgiving approached, and my parents tried to pressure me into attending dinner where Sophia would also be present. "She's still your sister," my mother insisted, "and it's been 2 months. At some point you need to move forward." "I am moving forward," I told her, "without Sophia in my life." "You can't just cut off family," my mother argued. "Blood is thicker than water." "Funny Sophia didn't seem to remember that when she was sleeping with my fiancé," I replied, ending yet another circular conversation. I spent Thanksgiving with Taylor's family instead, grateful for friends who had become more supportive than my own blood relatives. But even surrounded by their warmth and acceptance, I felt hollow, going through the motions of normalcy, while something vital inside me remained broken. The holiday season brought a fresh wave of depression as I faced Christmas alone for the first time in years. My sleep became erratic, my appetite non-existent. I lost 15 pounds in a matter of weeks, my clothes hanging loosely on my frame. Anxiety attacks became frequent, striking without warning in the middle of meetings or while grocery shopping. At Taylor's insistence, I finally made an appointment with a therapist. Dr. Levine specialized in betrayal trauma and helped me understand that my reactions were normal, even expected. "You experienced a double betrayal from the 2 people closest to you," she explained. "That's not something you just get over, because your mother thinks you should." With her guidance, I began to rebuild my sense of self, apart from Robert, apart from Sophia, even apart from my parents' expectations. It was slow, painful work, excavating who Madeline Collins really was when not defined by relationships to others. The lowest point came on New Year's Eve. I'd declined all invitations, preferring to spend the night alone, rather than forced cheerfulness I didn't feel. Scrolling mindlessly through social media, something Dr. Levine had advised against, but which I couldn't seem to stop doing, I came across a photo of Sophia wearing what appeared to be an engagement ring, Robert kissing her cheek as they displayed it for the camera. Engaged. Less than 3 months after our wedding day. I threw my phone across the room where it hit the wall and clattered to the floor, screen cracked, but still displaying that terrible image. Then I sank to the floor and cried until there were no tears left, until my throat was raw and my eyes swollen. That night alone on my living room floor, as the sounds of celebration echoed from neighboring apartments, I hit rock bottom. The question that had been haunting me finally crystallized. Was I not enough? Was there something fundamentally unlovable about me that had driven both my fiancé and my sister to betray me so completely? As the fireworks burst outside my window at midnight, I made a decision. I wouldn't let their actions define me any longer. I wouldn't let this betrayal be the story of my life. Somehow, I would find a way forward. I just had no idea yet what that path would look like. January brought with it a kind of clarity that only comes after hitting rock bottom. The day after my New Year's Eve breakdown, I woke with swollen eyes but a determined spirit. I methodically gathered every reminder of Robert and Sophia in my apartment, photos, gifts, mementos, and packed them into a box that I asked Taylor to store for me. Not because I couldn't bear to throw them away, but because I wasn't yet ready to make permanent decisions in my still emotional state. "This is a good step," Taylor observed, taking the sealed box. Dr. Levine would approve. The following week brought an unexpected confrontation. Robert asked to meet for coffee to discuss division of assets, a laughable concept since we had never married and had no legal entanglements beyond the lease we'd both been released from. Against Taylor's advice, I agreed to the meeting, choosing a busy coffee shop near my office, where the public setting would discourage drama. Robert was already there when I arrived, looking oddly diminished, without the admiration I'd once viewed him through. "Thank you for meeting me," he began formally, as if we were business associates, rather than 2 people who had once planned to spend their lives together. I wanted to clear the air about a few things. I remained silent, waiting for him to continue. "What happened with Sophia and me? It wasn't planned." He said, his eyes fixed on his coffee cup rather than meeting mine. "It just happened. There was this connection between us that I couldn't ignore. A connection so strong you had to act on it while engaged to her sister," I said flatly. "How romantic." He flinched slightly. "I know it sounds terrible. It was terrible. The way we went about it was wrong. I should have been honest with you sooner. Honest about using me for my professional connections, or honest about sleeping with my sister behind my back? Which part specifically should you have been more forthright about, Robert?" His jaw tightened. "That's not fair. What I said that day, I was just telling Sophia what she needed to hear. It wasn't the whole truth." "Then what is the whole truth?" I asked, genuinely curious what possible justification he could offer. Robert sighed, running a hand through his hair in a gesture I had once found endearing. The truth is, I did love you when we got engaged. But things changed. I started spending time with Sophia, and there was this chemistry between us that I couldn't ignore. I was too cowardly to end things with you properly. I kept telling myself I'd figure it out after the wedding. After the wedding, I repeated incredulously. After I was legally bound to you. How convenient. I know how it sounds, he admitted. But what you overheard that day wasn't the full story. Yes, I mentioned your business connections, but that was just me justifying my actions to myself. The real reason was simpler and worse. I fell for your sister, but was too much of a coward to tell you. Candice Mason. I studied his face, looking for any sign of the man I thought I'd known. And now you're engaged to her. 3 months after our wedding day. You move fast. He had the grace to look embarrassed. That wasn't planned either. It just happened during the holidays. Look, I didn't ask to meet to justify myself. I know what we did was wrong. I wanted to tell you that. He hesitated. That it wasn't about you. You didn't do anything wrong. You weren't lacking in any way. This was my failure, not yours. The words hit me harder than I expected. In all my dark moments of self-doubt, this was the question I'd been wrestling with. Was I somehow to blame? Was I not enough? I appreciate you saying that. I said, finally surprised to find I meant it. But it doesn't change anything between us. I know, he nodded. I just thought you should hear it. And there's something else you should know. Sophia wasn't my first indiscretion. I felt my eyebrows rise. You cheated on me before Sophia. He nodded, unable to meet my eyes. Twice. Business trips. One-time things. I convinced myself they didn't matter because they were just physical, not emotional. A cold laugh escaped me before I could stop it. And Sophia, was she just physical too? No, he said quietly. That's why it was different. That's why I couldn't walk away from her. I absorbed this new information, surprised by how little additional pain it caused. The betrayal had already been so complete that learning of earlier infidelities felt almost irrelevant. Is there anything else I should know? Any other confessions to unburden yourself with? I asked, ready for this conversation to end. Robert hesitated, then shook his head. No, that's everything. But something in his expression made me pause. Actually, there is something else. What is it? After a long moment, he sighed. The investment opportunity I got you involved in last year. It wasn't exactly as I presented it. The tech startup, what about it? It wasn't a legitimate investment. The company was already failing when I brought you in. Your money helped prop it up temporarily, but it's gone now. All of it. The $30,000 I'd invested from my savings. Gone. Not because of normal business risks, but because Robert had deliberately misled me. You stole from me. I said, my voice eerily calm despite the rage building inside. On top of everything else, you're a thief. I was trying to save the company, he defended weakly. My firm had a major stake in it. If it had worked out, you would have made a profit. But it didn't work out, did it? And you knew it wouldn't when you took my money. I stood up, gathering my coat and bag. I'll be contacting a lawyer about this. Don't try to contact me again. As I walked out of the coffee shop, I felt strangely lighter. The man I had almost married was not just a cheater, but a liar and a thief. Any lingering doubts about our broken engagement vanished completely. I hadn't just dodged a bullet. I'd escaped a catastrophe. The next day, I started therapy in earnest, committing to weekly sessions with Dr. Levine. We worked through the complex emotions of betrayal trauma, not just the pain of Robert's infidelity, but the deeper wound of Sophia's betrayal. Sister relationships are among our most formative, Dr. Levine explained. When that bond is broken, especially through betrayal, it can shake your entire foundation. Through therapy, I began to recognize patterns that had existed long before Robert entered our lives. Sophia's competitiveness, my parents' uneven treatment of us, my own tendency to minimize my needs to keep the peace. Robert and the wedding disaster were just the breaking point of a dysfunctional system that had been building for decades. My professional life, meanwhile, took an unexpected turn. A high-profile client whose charity gala I had managed reached out specifically because of how I'd handled my wedding disaster. Anyone can run an event when everything goes perfectly, she told me over lunch. I need someone who can handle a crisis with dignity, and from what I heard, that's exactly what you did. This conversation led to a new focus for elite affairs. crisis management for luxury events. Drawing on my own experience, I developed protocols for handling unexpected disasters, from weather emergencies to family dramas to vendor failures. This specialization attracted clients who valued preparation and grace under pressure, qualities I had demonstrated at my own non-wedding. By late February, I had regained my professional footing. My personal life, however, remained a work in progress. Taylor, seeing my continued struggle, finally intervened with characteristic directness. "You need a change of scene," she announced one evening, letting herself into my apartment with the spare key I'd given her. "I've booked us a week in Sedona. Red Rock Spiritual Energy, no cell service. You're coming." "I can't just leave," I protested. "I have the Morrison wedding next month and the Bryant anniversary party, and your team can handle it," Taylor interrupted. "You've been working 60-hour weeks since January. This isn't healthy, Maddie. You're avoiding healing by burying yourself in work." She was right, of course. Work had become my refuge from facing the emotional aftermath of the wedding disaster. I could lose myself in event details and client meetings, postponing the harder work of rebuilding my personal life. Sedona proved to be exactly what I needed. The stark beauty of the Red Rock formations, the clear desert air, and the enforced distance from Chicago's gossip circuit allowed me to breathe freely for the first time in months. Taylor and I hiked during the day and spent evenings talking under star-filled skies, reconnecting with a friendship that had been my one constant through the chaos. It was during a sunrise hike that we met Jackson, a photographer capturing the dramatic light on the rocks. He offered to take our photo with the stunning landscape behind us, and something in his calm demeanor and direct gaze caught my attention. "You have an interesting face," he said after taking several shots. "There's a story there." "Several, actually," I replied with a small smile. We ended up hiking together that day, and I found myself sharing parts of my story with this stranger. Jackson listened without judgment, occasionally offering insights from his own experience. He had been divorced 3 years earlier after discovering his wife's affair with his business partner. "The betrayal nearly destroyed me," he admitted as we rested on a plateau overlooking the valley. "For a long time I defined myself by it. The guy who got cheated on, the victim. It took a while to realize that wasn't who I was. It was just something that happened to me." His words resonated deeply. I had been allowing the wedding disaster to define me, to become my entire identity. But it wasn't who I was. It was just something that had happened to me. When we returned to Chicago, Jackson and I maintained contact, a friendship slowly developing without pressure or expectations. He understood my trust issues in a way others couldn't, never pushing for more than I was ready to give. His presence in my life became a gentle reminder that connections with others were still possible, even after devastating betrayal. 6 months after the wedding that wasn't, I received an unexpected call from my father. "I'd like to take you to dinner," he said, "just the two of us." We met at a quiet restaurant in Lincoln Park, away from the downtown scene, where I might run into professional acquaintances. My father looked older than I remembered, new lines etched around his eyes and mouth. "I owe you an apology," he began after we'd ordered. "I've been thinking about it a lot these past months. I failed you, Madeline." "Dad, no," I protested. "You supported me through everything." He shook his head. "Not just with Robert and the wedding. Before that, throughout your childhood." He took a deep breath. "Your mother and I, we always gave Sophia more attention, more leeway. You were so capable, so self-sufficient, we told ourselves you didn't need as much from us. But that wasn't fair to you." Tears welled in my eyes at this unexpected acknowledgement. "I always felt like I had to be perfect to get your attention," I admitted. "Like being good wasn't enough if I wasn't also exceptional." "I know," he said sadly, "and that's on us, not you." I've been doing some reflecting since the wedding. The way Sophia behaved, it didn't come from nowhere. Your mother and I enabled her self-centeredness by never holding her accountable. We failed you both in different ways. This conversation marked a turning point in my relationship with my father. He began making regular efforts to connect with me one-on-one, showing interest in my business and my healing journey. My mother proved less capable of this kind of reflection, still making excuses for Sophia and pressing me to reconcile for the sake of family harmony. "Mum still doesn't get it," I told Dr. Levine during a session. "She acts like I'm being difficult by maintaining boundaries with Sophia." "Your mother has her own investment in the family dynamic," Dr. Levine observed. Acknowledging Sophia's betrayal would mean acknowledging her own role in creating the conditions that made it possible. As spring turned to summer, I received an unexpected opportunity that would test my professional and personal growth. A client whose wedding I had planned 2 years earlier contacted me about her sister's upcoming nuptials. "After what happened at your wedding, I wasn't sure if you'd still do weddings," she admitted on the phone. "But honestly, that's exactly why we want you. Anyone who had the courage to do what you did, rather than go through with a sham marriage, understands the importance of integrity on your wedding day." The irony wasn't lost on me. My own wedding disaster had become a selling point rather than a liability. The experience had given me a unique perspective on what really mattered when two people committed their lives to each other. Taking on this wedding meant facing potential triggers and painful memories. But it also represented a chance to reclaim this part of my professional identity, to prove to myself that Robert and Sophia hadn't taken this from me too. With Dr. Levine's support, I accepted the project, approaching it with a new philosophy that emphasized authenticity over perfection, substance over spectacle. The experience proved cathartic, allowing me to transform my personal pain into wisdom that benefited others. As my professional confidence returned, I found myself increasingly able to share my story with others who had experienced betrayal. What began as informal conversations with friends and acquaintances evolved into a small support group that met monthly in a private room at my favorite restaurant. Betrayal to breakthrough. We called it, focusing not just on surviving betrayal, but on using it as a catalyst for personal growth. "You should share this more widely," Jackson suggested after I told him about the group. By then, our friendship had cautiously evolved into something more, though we were taking things painfully slowly by mutual agreement. "Your story could help a lot of people." His encouragement led to an invitation to speak on a popular Chicago podcast about relationships and resilience. The episode went viral, generating more responses than any previous episode. Suddenly, my inbox was flooded with messages from others who had experienced similar betrayals, thanking me for giving voice to their experiences. This unexpected platform brought new healing as I realized my pain could serve a purpose, helping others navigate their own journeys through betrayal. The woman who had been publicly humiliated at her own wedding was now being sought out for her wisdom and strength. A transformation I could never have imagined in those dark days after the wedding. 9 months after the wedding day that changed everything, I received news that brought a complicated satisfaction. Robert's firm was under investigation for financial irregularities, including the fraudulent investment he had tricked me into making. Several clients had filed complaints, and his professional reputation was in tatters. I had already recovered most of my investment through legal channels, sending a clear message that I wouldn't be his victim in any sense. But the public downfall felt like a form of cosmic justice karma catching up with him at last. Sophia reached out during this time, perhaps hoping Robert's troubles would soften my stance. Her message struck a different tone than her previous attempts at reconciliation. "I don't expect forgiveness, Maddie. I just want you to know I understand now what I destroyed, and I'm truly sorry." I didn't respond immediately, needing time to process whether this represented genuine remorse or just another manipulation. After discussing it with Dr. Levine, I eventually sent a brief acknowledgement. "Thank you for the apology. I'm not ready for more contact, but I appreciate the sentiment." It wasn't forgiveness exactly, but it was a step away from the bitter anger that had consumed me initially. As Dr. Levine had helped me understand, forgiveness wasn't about excusing their actions or welcoming them back into my life. It was about releasing the hold their betrayal had on me, freeing myself from the prison of resentment. A year after the wedding day, I made a deliberate choice to spend the anniversary doing something meaningful, rather than allowing it to be a day of mourning. I closed the office and took my entire team to volunteer at a women's shelter, helping to organize a career workshop for residents trying to rebuild their lives. From broken plans to new beginnings, I told my staff as we worked alongside the shelter residents, sometimes the worst day of your life can lead to your most authentic path. That evening, Jackson took me to dinner at the top of the Willis Tower, the site of Robert's proposal 2 years earlier. It was a bold choice, and I hesitated when I realized his plan. "We can go somewhere else," he offered immediately, seeing my expression. I didn't think about the association. "No," I decided after a moment. "I don't want Robert to own any piece of this city for me. Let's make new memories here." Over dinner, with the Chicago skyline glittering below us, Jackson reached for my hand. "I'm not proposing," he said with a gentle smile, understanding my wariness about rushing into another relationship. "I just want you to know that meeting you has been the best thing that's happened to me in years, and whenever you're ready, whether that's months or years from now, I'll be here." His patience and understanding were everything Robert had lacked, a stark reminder of how different healthy love could be from the counterfeit version I'd nearly settled for. "I'm getting there," I told him honestly. Slowly but surely. And I was. The woman who had walked down the aisle a year ago to expose betrayal rather than accept it was still part of me, but she wasn't all of me anymore. I had built something new from the ashes of that day. A stronger sense of self, deeper friendships, more authentic connections, and a redefined version of success that valued integrity over appearances. The betrayal had broken me open, but in that breaking, it had created space for a more honest, more resilient version of myself to emerge. Not in spite of the public humiliation, but because of it. I had faced my worst fear, being betrayed and abandoned by those closest to me, and discovered I could not only survive it, but transform it into something meaningful. That perhaps was the most unexpected outcome of all. Have you ever experienced betrayal by someone close to you? How did you find your way through it? Share your story in the comments below, and let's continue this conversation about healing and resilience. If this story resonated with you, please hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. I share new stories of overcoming life's challenges every week. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember, sometimes the worst day of your life can become the first day of your most authentic path.